Huzzah and welcome to Beyond the Gates, an Ohio Renaissance Faire production. On this show, you will hear from all your favorite members of Streetcast, vendors, and stage shows. We will hear wonderful stories from years past and find out who are the people who make the fair as magical as it is. So please, join us and enjoy Beyond the Gates. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Gates, an Ohio Renaissance Faire production. It is your host, Lucas, and today we have another special episode with none other than Hale. Hale, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. It's great to have you on. I know you've been involved in many aspects of fair life, in one way or another.
Right.
Could you just real quick do just a rundown because we're going to get into every little thing a little bit, but from my understanding, you are a member of Streetcast. You also work in the office for Brimstone.
Yep, I
Uh,
do.
you you're a guild leader.
Yes.
You are a member of Up Mayhem, the improv group at the Ohio
Yep.
Renaissance Fair.
Yep.
And how long have you been on Streetcast?
So I joined Streetcast in 2012. I was 16 and my so Sean Hall, who's a part of Father, Son, and Friends, he's a family friend. And he called me when I was 16 and was like, "How did your audition go?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he was like, "Okay, I'll call you back in 10 minutes." And then he called me back and he told me to show up at this time at this place and talk to Dave Smith. And I did. And I thought I had a summer job picking up trash, but turns out I was doing the whole acting thing. And I loved that at the time. And I just kind of stuck with it.
So you've been a member of cast for going into what your 12th year now?
12 years, 13 seasons.
12 years, 13 seasons. I'm guessing they've all been consecutive then?
Yes. Yep.
What is your current role on cast?
Currently, I am playing Quin Havok, Q for short, because we are actors. So my name shortened is Q Havok because obviously that's what we do in Made Up Mayhem. We're all playing actors this year, which is relatively new.
What are some of the other roles you've had on cast? I remember you in Village and Pirates.
Yeah, so I played a couple of different characters in Village. I played a um like a I played the person who was responsible for the escaped Bedlam patient. That was my first role ever. And then I played the party planner slash mistress of misrule. I played a trashmonger. I've played the gong farmer or poop shoveler. And then as far as pirates go, I've been a pirate for 2 different years. And the longest role that I ever played actually was a fairy character, a puka named Patch. That was where my Gong Farmer character name actually originally came from because they were named the same.
So you've been a member of every guild on cast then, other than Court.
Everguild but Court. Yep, I came real close to being on Court a couple of years, but I never actually got that far.
Are you thinking about doing it for next year for just to get the whole trifecta?
No, I've thought about it a couple of times, but now that all of Mum is or all of Made Up Mayhem is now that all of us are actors, we're all villagers and it makes the most sense. So maybe one day, maybe not. I don't know, we'll see.
So could you tell us a little bit more about your whole audition process?
Yeah, so I because I got told to show up at a certain place at a certain time, like I just got the call. Um, I showed up. I thought I was gonna have a job picking up trash for the summer. I was 16 years old. I actually showed up to the first day of rehearsals, so I never ended up having to audition. And back then, Streetcast was like 40 people, which is Village Guild is 60 people now, and that's half of our street
Hmm.
cast. So just to put that in perspective of what it was like then. And I basically just did my first day of rehearsals. It rained and I was hooked, and I've been coming back ever since.
What has been your favorite role that you've had on cast?
It's definitely a tie between the two patches, the Fae patch, or when I played the Gong Farmer patch. Fae patch was the essentially her job as a Fae. She was a fox Fae, and essentially her job was to every story, right, has people who bring good into the world, who balance the world with good. Well, Patch's whole deal was that she balanced the world with chaos. So I loved playing that character because essentially in my head I had no power, but everyone thought that I was just this crazy creature of chaos. Um, and then I had to switch to being a human to be in a show. So I basically developed the same character personality into a poop shoveler character for the festival. And I spent more or less like 5 years, 6 years, I want to say, just making poop jokes. And, I never thought that that would be my lot in life, but I loved it.
How was making the transition from being just a member of Streetcast to your role as a guild leader?
Yeah. I am the kind of person that I grew up in a community service organization as a kid. It's also a leadership organization called the JCs. So I'm the kind of person that like I see things and then I just sort of want to be involved at every level. And pretty much within my first couple of years of Streetcast, I really started to look up to my guild leader at the time, whose name was Travis. And he was just amazing, full of fun and absolutely inspiring, and very goofy, and I wanted to be that kind of mentor for other people. And so when an opening finally came up in Village, I went to Dave and I asked him if that was something that I could do. And I got a couple of years where I got to train under somebody else because he'd already kind of picked somebody else to do it. And so I got a couple of years to train, and around the same time we developed the Fae Guild. And before they were a separate guild entirely, they were just a part of Village, and there was only four of us that first year. And essentially, I basically got to lead the Fae Guild, and I pitched Dave this 3-year plan to get them set up on their own. And then we set somebody else up as their guild leader, and then I kind of took over Village at that time. And I really just love helping people fall in love with Streetcast the way that I did. So I've never looked back. I've never regretted it once, and it's kind of just always been my goal.
Do you have any stories that really stick with you from your first couple of years of being a part of Streetcast? And since because when I was talking to David, you said the change of ownership happened in 2015.
Yep.
So do you have any stories from those first couple of years and kind of that really stick with you that are a little bit different from, I'm guessing, how things are now?
Yeah, those first couple of years, it is crazy because the new owners changed the festival a lot, and with that, the the amount of people that come out to festival change, and even vendors and entertainers, and it's crazy. The first couple of years, I kind of remember very differently. It was a very different festival because there wasn't as much new stuff going on. All of the stages had kind of been left to their own devices for years. They were kind of falling apart. And once the new owners bought it, they really just bought it and put a lot into it. So most of my memories from those first couple of years are, having to do what I would like to call like guerrilla warfare acting to really pull people into your stages, because a lot of them were like behind trees or such. Like, before we had the barbecue where it is now, there used to be a little tiny stage. We called it the wine garden stage, and it would, whenever it rained, it would float away in the wash whenever it would flood. And so I remember there being several days where we would get there and we would have to either like pull our stage out of the wash and like set it up, or even just like move ourselves to the bridge there because that bridge was still there. It
Hmm.
just didn't have all the deck and everything. Move ourselves to the bridge there and find a way to. I was in choir then, so find a way to sing on the bridge and still make tips and still do a show and still fill all of the things without just sort of singing to empty benches. Because, like I said, we were less popular then, and then of course, there was less amenities at the time as well. So
This is the first time I've ever heard of that stage area
yeah,
or any stories of pulling a stage out of the wash.
yeah, we had to do it all the time. We'd get there sometimes, and the stage would just be gone, or it'd be like down in the wash, and we'd just decide whether or not we were gonna pull it out or not.
I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing a story that I had no idea was even a thing.
Yeah. There's all kinds of horror stories. It was, and that area was just so little. Like it was kind of like a nook area that people would like
Hmm.
just sort of go back into, and they called it the wine garden because they served wine from the sidebar. So you could kind of go over and get your glass of wine, and you could kind of sit there and chill off of the road. But they put a stage back there too. But because it wasn't like a full stage or a big stage, it just didn't get all of the attention that some of the other stages got. And we weren't big enough to justify that at the time either. So, you know, you make do.
Uh, Kind of doing a switch pretty much at this point in the show. I would ask what you do when you're not on Streetcast,
Mhm.
as in your regular 9 to 5 job, but your
Yep.
regular 9 to 5 job is still being a part of the fair life and the fair experience. What exactly do you do in the office?
So, my job in the office, I don't have like an official title or anything.
Hmm.
I am our main front office person. So usually when you call the fair, you end up talking to me. I also end up managing like our lost and found and like little things like that. But most of the time, the rest of the year, we have grown so much that I end up helping out with a lot of special projects. In the most recent years, it's been a lot of like tracking for vendors because we have 200 vendors. When I started, I think it was like 150. And we've gotten a new vendor coordinator in that amount of time. So basically, I help facilitate putting messages out from her to them. I also help like tracking all of like contracts and certificates of insurance and payments and all those boring things that nobody likes to think about but have to sort of happen to keep the business going between our vendors and us because none of the vendors who work at the festival, they're all their own businesses and most of them travel between fairs. So it's not like we hire in a bunch of people to run all these shops. It truly is more like a mall kind of experience.
When did you start doing that?
So I was hired in 2016. It was just a little bit after the new owners bought the place. And ironically, the way that I got hired was very similar to the way that I joined Streetcast. I Cheryl, our marketing director, reached out to me. We had CFO, our first year CFO, and I had a lot of experience with volunteers because I grew up in volunteer organization. And I had pitched a couple of ideas to her, and she was like, "Hey, why don't you come in for 2 days and package up all these tickets that we have to mail out to radio stations and whatnot for like trade stuff? And then we can talk about this while you're here." And that those 2 days kind of turned into 3 days and then 4 days, and I just kept coming back, and she just kept giving me more things to do. And a few years later, I was working another job at the time, so a few years later, I kind of left that job and went full time at the fair. And once again, I've just been doing it ever since.
How is your position uh, in the office affected your relationship with being a part of cast?
Um, ooh, that's rough. I would not say that it makes it easier. There are times where, like, just being able to know the reasoning behind things helps me understand why things are happening. And being able to explain that to people makes my life a little bit easier and whatnot. But ultimately, actually, I would say that it does make things a little bit difficult because when I walk around on the street as a streetcast character, most of the vendors know me from the office. So they end up calling out like my real name or things like that, or, those kinds of things. Though I will say that being on streetcast, I think benefits my office job more because being able to be out and know what's going on and know a lot of the people who are doing the fair while I'm doing everything in the office actually it helps me answer questions with all of our patrons when I answer phones. And then also because of the way that the community is, the Ren Fair community and our vendors and participants who do travel around from festival to festival, to them, when they talk to people from our fair, and our fair has quite a lot of people in our office who work these other jobs at the festival, whether they've been a vendor before or an entertainer or what have you. Um, Being able to tell those participants that we understand what they're talking about is actually very nice because a lot of times there's this belief that people in the office really don't understand what's going on from that perspective. And it's not entirely untrue, but when you have people who work in the office who do understand that, I feel like the way that we communicate with our participants really the quality of it increases.
No, that's great. That's great. Uh, as somebody who, I mean, we've become friends through
Mhm.
doing the Ren Fair, and something that's kind of stuck with me is just like how does how does Hales separate everything? Because personally, I enjoy the fact that I live an hour away from Fair.
Mhm.
Well, to an extent, to an extent. Like I have that separation of like work and fair life, and it doesn't sound like that aspect kind of blends together and is a little overwhelming. That's how I would have treated it.
Yeah, and it is sometimes, but I
Hmm.
also before I started to do like entertainment, the entertainment industry and whatnot, my goal was to be a teacher because when I had graduated from high school, I really liked the idea of finding like a small community. Not, I don't need to make a difference in the world, but if I can find a small community or something and really make a difference there, really contribute there, like that's always been very fulfilling for me. And so like I had wanted to do that like as a high school teacher and really just get really involved and become a drama teacher and all that stuff. And that didn't really pan out for a lot of different reasons, but I've kind of found a different version of that in working at the Ren Fair. And I really enjoy that. Even though sometimes the separation sometimes does get a little hard, the lack of separation.
Are you there? You're there for Yuletide as well. I mean, it's your full-time job, so you're there for Fair, Yuletide, and then Celtic Festival, and then starting it all over again.
Yes, but the only one that I do double duty for is fair, is the Ohio Renaissance Festival. Other than that, I am full staff for the other two events usually.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Um, so what exactly is Made Up Mayhem?
So Made Up Mayhem is a group of essentially we're improvisers. We're an improv troupe that does comedy shows. We started at the Renaissance Festival. Oh gosh, I don't even know how many years it's been now, since before the new owners. It's been a very long time. And we basically just grew ourselves from what was a bit up to being a full-on group that goes out and does shows. And we do short form improv, which is essentially games that are, 5 minutes long, maybe 10 minutes long at most. And then we also do at the festival now, we do what's called long form improv, which for our purposes is an hour long story that we tell in essentially 4 15-minute chunks. But no matter what we do, we're always getting some sort of suggestion or call out from the audience because we never have a plan. I mean, we have a loose form that we follow, but we never know exactly what we're going to do, what jokes we're going to say, what words we're going to say, and how it's going to go until it's in the middle of going.
How many members are in Made at Mayhem?
There are 8 of us. We used to have up to, I want to say our largest we ever were was 16, 14, 16, around that number. But officially there are 8 of us now, and that's kind of our limit because of our microphone situation.
You were just talking about being in a teaching role,
Mhm.
and as somebody who is a part of Streetcast, I know during rehearsals that Made Up Mayhem leads a good chunk of the rehearsal time with different improv games, warm up activities. How did that part of Made Up Mayhem start?
Yeah. So basically, we had for in Streetcast for a very, very long time, we had another person who taught improv. And they did a pretty good job. They had a solid class outline. And actually, we still do follow many of the things that they set in place because it was all based on a lot of really good basics. Um, but Streetcast had kind of stagnated for a long time. We were kind of following the same lessons over and over again, which is on some level a necessity because we have new people coming in each year and we have people who've never done improv before. And improv is the backbone of what we do on Streetcast, really, just because it helps you learn how to talk to people. And that's all our job is on Streetcast is to talk to people who attend the fair. So when that other person left the Streetcast, Dave reached out to us and asked us if we would start teaching Streetcast. And this led us down a whole new path, which we had never really anticipated going down, which is learning how to be teachers. And some of our members, like myself, I had, gotten some ways in my college classes about teaching. I was very close to actually getting to the point where I was in classrooms before I switched my major and changed what I was doing there. But another one of our members, Evan, actually is a teacher. And some of our other members have some other mild experience with teaching acting and other things. And we basically kind of sat down, the 8 of us, and we talked about what we liked and we talked about what we didn't like. And we put together a curriculum. And then we decided to make it even more difficult for ourselves by releasing a survey to Streetcast every year and changing it every year because that's what we had wanted to see. Um, but I don't think any of us regret doing that. It, like I said,
Hmm.
it's certainly the more difficult path to take, but I think all of us feel real good with, maybe not every single lesson that we do, but it's a learning experience for us. There's always going to be new things. And I think overall, Streetcast finds themselves being less bogged down by the same thing again and again. So it's been real fun.
As somebody who's been on the student side of the whole made a mayhem mum relationship,
Mhm.
it's definitely been fun for me. I did a lot of I've done theater. I did theater in high school. I did theater in college, and in college we did no improv, which I found very surprising because I did so much improv in high school. And so going from being used to doing improv to cutting it out entirely to now having to do improv pretty much every single day that I'm at fair.
Mhm.
It was definitely a big help to get everything, the rust off all the gears from doing improv for a little bit. And
Mhm.
I think you and the rest of Mum do a fantastic job with teaching us. And uh, as somebody who has a little bit of experience in it, I think all of Mum does a great job of being very inviting to people who probably haven't done improv before. And you're very, I don't want to say beginner friendly, but you're very open and it's easy to pick up on the improv and what is expected out of the improv, in my opinion.
Thanks. That's a relief to hear. A lot
Yeah.
of improv spaces are very competitive. And we kind of set out from the very beginning to be like, we don't want a competitive atmosphere. That's not what Streetcast is about. We're not getting up on stages and competing. There is a form of improv called Improv Olympics, and even very famous prior improv place called the Improv Olympics, the IO. But it's also there's a couple of more local improv troops that will do a form called Improv Olympics where they will compete against each other for stuff. And that's very fun. And there's certainly something you can learn from the competition of it, but it's not really the vibe of our fair. And so we very much set out to be open and more focus on the play rather than the getting it right all the time.
Hmm. Now, something new, and please elaborate on this, because I'm probably going to get it wrong. Something new that I have found out about Mum is that you are starting the process of becoming still tied to the Renaissance Fair, Ohio Renaissance Fair, but you've started the process of maybe taking the show on the road, so to speak.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, we kind of started as just a bit for the Ohio Renaissance Festival pub sing, the end of the day show. We played I Like My, which is still absolutely our best game, our most favorite game that everybody loves when we play. Actually, we kind of get yelled at when we don't play that at pub sing, so we almost always have to play it. Um, it's my favorite personally, but anyways, so we started there and eventually kind of got surprised with a stage show one year by Dave, and it just went so well. And we started to gain this popularity that a lot of us were like, well, we think we have something here, like let's do something with this. So we've been slowly working over the past couple of years to really start branching out and going to different places. We had a show at the Forge Tavern in Columbus a while back.
Hmm.
We also had a show. There was one of the coolest things I think we've done so far is there was a show during the eclipse earlier this year over in Indiana. The Cincinnati Circus hosted it, and it was just very cool to go do a Ren Fair and also watch the eclipse in totality. So, but we're gonna take it a little bit further and officially break off, do the whole thing, and you know, see where it takes us.
So something that I've asked everybody who's come on the show, it's of course, as you know, people who have been a part of the fair for quite some time. Um, what can you say is maybe not the biggest difference, but what are some of the biggest differences that you have seen happen with cast or the fair just from your time starting in 2012 to now?
By far, we are a way more inclusive place. And I know that sounds weird because fair's kind of always been an inclusive place, but I actually just noticed this past weekend while we were walking around doing parade, just the amount of diversity that has really developed in the festival. You didn't used to see as many people of color walking around the festival. It was very rare. And I love seeing way more people out there. And even on Streetcast, we used to be, there were only 40 of us when I started. So, you would have a lot of like people sharing the same ideas. And if somebody didn't always fit that, even especially 10, 15 years ago, the way of the world has changed even subtly, where people didn't always feel as open, and now it doesn't feel like we have that as much. It feels like we have way more celebration for people in their differences, and um trying crazy things, and just sort of going out there, and uh also being children essentially, which I know also kind of sounds weird, but I think the con culture has really affected Renaissance festivals a lot. So seeing that grow and seeing more and more adults come out and really kind of embrace like their inner child and begin to play and do dumb things with Streetcast that you being a member of Streetcast know that we do childlike things like hopscotch and jump rope and all of those kinds
Hmm.
of things that you as an adult are like, well, I'm not really going to do this unless there's like a 2-year-old here and I kind of have to walk a 2-year-old through it. But seeing people really get into it, whereas when I first joined we would have to almost sort of drag adults into those kinds of bits with us and really try and like be like, no, this is cool, you can do this, and then watch them kind of realize and have fun. it's not as much of a struggle to drag people into that stuff anymore. And it's really liberating in a way
Hmm.
to sort of just embrace the play atmosphere and vibe of it all.
Have you been to a knighting ceremony recently?
I have not been to a knighting ceremony recently. Actually, I haven't been to a knighting ceremony since I left choir, which I want to say was in 2018.
Gotcha. I throughout the day, members of court hand out knighting ceremony invitations, and they're usually two children. But
Hmm.
when knighting ceremony comes around, and this is just building off of what you said,
Yeah, yeah.
there are people getting knighted of all ages, and
Yeah.
it is really great to see. But like you
I think
said,
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. People just there's somebody a full grown man well into his 50s is like, yeah, can the queen make me a knight, and just like getting all excited to get a certificate at the end of the day, which is it's fantastic. Knighting ceremony is hands down my favorite part of the day.
Yeah, I love that. There's no expiration date on fun.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
yeah. Oh, that's great. That should be the tagline for this episode. No expiration date for fun.
It's true. It's true. A lot of people think they become adults and then they're like, "Oh, well, I guess I can't do this anymore." And I think a lot of adulthood nowadays is just fighting that urge, and just
Hmm.
trying to have fun again. So I love the con culture. I love the fair culture. I love what it's done to people in general, just living their best life.
No, that's great. That's great. And I agree with everything that you just said there. That was fantastic answer. And now for the other question that I am going to be asking everybody who comes on the show. Uh, what keeps you coming back to back each year? Not only the fact that
Oh,
you work in the office, but
right. I'm they kind of pay me to do that. No, I think a lot of it just really comes back to what we were just talking about with the play aspect of it all. You know, there's a lot of and you know this actually, there's a lot of people who, especially streetcast, and we do this yearly. You get to the end of the season and you're kind of sad, but you're also very much ready to be done and you're ready to have your weekends back and you're ready to do all those things. And that's certainly true. I never get rid of that, and every year that I do this a little bit more and it comes up, I'm like, oh no, it's my last weekend. But I still absolutely could never imagine like giving it up entirely and not having something to do, not having that uh release, that hobby, that thing that I look forward to doing every year. It's almost like the equivalent of my Christmas, for me. I love coming back. I love seeing new people. I love being in the office. There are a handful of people every year, actually, when people start to arrive on site, that they'll come into the office and they'll say hi. And I love to see them, um, and hear how their year went. And, there's some people that you see and they just make you smile. They just make your day brighter. And all of the best people I've ever met have been at the Renaissance Festival, truly. And I, I know there's just always someone else new to meet who's awesome and something new to learn that's going to be real cool.
No, that's great. That's great. That is definitely something that I can relate to. And no, that was a fantastic answer. Uh, do you now reflecting back to the very beginning of the show,
Mhm.
and I asked you about a story that you had from your uh early years on cast. Is there now a more memorable story that you have from recent years where stages
Ooh.
are in place and not floating down the wash?
Right, right. Where things change a little bit. Oh, that's a tough one because there's so many. Like there's so
Hmm.
many stories that come up as time goes on. I really love um ooh. I did actually think of another one, but it is actually from my second year. It's not from more recent. Um hmm, man, that is a tough one. because you just gain so many memories. You kind of try and like rank them all, but then they all kind of fall off and you get them all confused. Hmm. So I would have to say probably I talked earlier about my more recent years being the gong farmer, the poop shoveler of the village. I absolutely have had the most crazy experiences being that character. I have had people come up to me and try to get me to diagnose their health problems. Legitimately, like they'll tell me like the status of their poop, and then they'll be like, "Should I see a doctor about that?" Um, but I have to say, I think one of my favorite times was I had this guy, and it was a very busy day. And luckily, now that we've got the Caps tickets, we had a Caps weekend this past weekend, and we don't have any more of those kinds of issues. So I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed that it's that way forever. But one of the years more recently, when we got super busy and we had, just absolutely a ton of people in the park, just packed wall to wall, right? And the bathroom lines can, of course, get pretty long in that case. I spent a lot of time just going around those bathroom lines and doing what I would like to call like poo calisthenics, um, which is basically just making people stretch before they get up to the stalls so that they can be quote unquote ready to do their business. Um, and one time I did this, right? And there were these people in line and I did this and I got various responses and whatnot. And then a few hours later, I was on stunt show that year. And so I was walking out from behind the ship stage that we have. And this patron was walking back behind the stage. And I was like, "Excuse me, sir, like, is there something I can do? Like, can I help you? Do you need something? Are you looking for someone?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for a bathroom." And I was like, "Oh, well, I really wish we had a bathroom back there, but we don't." And he was like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna go in the wash." And I was like, "No, no, no, you cannot do that. Like, that's not a thing we can do." And he was like, "Yeah, but you can tell me that's okay." And I had to somehow explain to this man that even though like that was my job and I had just come up to him a few hours earlier in the lines for a bathroom as an authoritative person on bathroom mechanics, that I was not the person who could give him permission to do that. And I had to ask him to leave and walk him to the bathrooms essentially, to make sure that he went in the right place. So, uh, crazy things. But you know, I still wouldn't change it. I loved making poop jokes for a year. So if that's the cost it came at, I'll walk a couple dudes to the bathroom. Yeah, yeah. We had some crazy years with the attendance, and I think capping the attendance, and maybe this is a very office perspective of me to have, but I think capping the
hmm
attendance really has helped those things. Like this last weekend, we had our first day, and it didn't really seem like there were any lines that waited. People waited like hours in line to go to the bathroom, which is certainly something that has happened in the past. So I am thankful for that.
Uh, to piggyback off of what you just said about the capping, just
Mhm,
on the various Facebook groups that I'm a part of, and I see people commenting about their experience of being at fair.
mhm.
There has been a lot of positive response from people who were there on Saturday. I think having the cap days is definitely interesting. It's definitely
Yeah.
interesting, but I think it's a necessary, and it seemed to help from what I could tell. I
Yeah,
know.
well, and it seems to be the standard on the circuit too. A lot of other
Mhm.
festivals are going that way too. So it's not just us anymore, but
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right, Hale. Well, on that note of helping somebody go to the bathroom and not in the wash, uh,
Yeah, yeah, whatever you need.
thank you very much for coming on this episode of Beyond the Gates. Is there anything that you would like to mention real quick of maybe how people can be sure to catch a mum show while they're at fair?
Yeah, so Made Up Mayhem currently doesn't have like an open show. Currently, we do the Royal Feast at the festival, which is an $80 ticket on Saturdays. It's a $75 ticket on Sundays, which seems like a lot, but you get a five-course meal, you get unlimited drinks, you get a free mug that you get to take away with you when you leave. And then, of course, we do a 1 hour long improv show. You're served by other street cast members at the time too. All of your food is brought to you. And then, of course, we also have a guest act each day. So even though it's a bit of an expensive ticket, it's definitely worth the price because you're getting way more than just Made Up Mayhem. Um, Other than that, though, we're basically just walking around the village all day long. So you can catch us on the streets at any point in time. We'll usually be playing improv games or we've got a portable dramatic entrance that we carry around. So look for the red curtain and make your dramatic entrance.
Awesome. Those tickets for the show, do they have to be purchased day of at the fair, or can they be purchased ahead of time online?
Definitely recommend purchasing them ahead of time online, just because we do sell out at times. However, if we do have them left, you can still purchase them day of if you make a last minute decision and say you want to do it. You can always check with our special events booth. The your favorite NPCs run that booth, and they're excellent about giving information and selling tickets. And then you just show up and do the thing.
All right. Well, Hale, thank you very much for coming on this episode of Beyond the Gates. And thank you so much to all the listeners out there. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We are quickly approaching to the point where this will be on Apple Podcasts, but as of right now, we are still on YouTube and Spotify. And once again, huzzah!
Huzzah!